Indie games, what many will consider the final frontier when it comes to creative ideas and unique concepts in the gaming industry. Indie games have always offered us amazing experiences that are truly their own. Unfortunately, with such a huge volume of releases dropping constantly, a lot of hidden gems and masterpieces fall through the cracks. I'm a firm believer that when it comes to art, or games in this case, that the next greatest one is out there, you just gotta find it. It could have released years ago, and maybe you just wasn't aware of its existence, which is why today, we'll be looking at 5 of my all-time favourite indie games that are criminally underrated and deserving of your time. You can also consider this video as a buying guide. I'll be showing what systems these games are available on as well as their price. And with that out of the way, let's move straight on to number 5. The most recent release on this list, and probably the most well known, Crow Country, which came out back in May. Made by SFB Games, Crow Country has you playing as an unusual policewoman named Mara Forrest as you explore this long defunct and abandoned amusement park from the 90s. Throughout the game, you slowly peel away at the park's past and what led it to shutting down, as well as the main character's ties in all this. Crow Country takes inspiration from 90s horror classics back on the original PlayStation. Games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, you'll be spending bullets wisely and only healing when absolutely needed. Putting the survival part in survival horror, the presentation of this game I found very charming. The low poly look and the lighting really makes the game pop. Some of the enemy designs are very out there, nothing too scary by modern standards, but the dark atmosphere and sound design will have you feeling on edge at times. The developers really went to great lengths making this game feel as authentic as possible, with it fitting right in with other games that released back in the 90s. However, Crow Country blends both old and new with the quality of life improvements the game released today, such as a hint system and the map locating points of interest, making navigating and backtracking a breeze. The areas are also not so huge, so the whole experience is straightforward and beginner friendly. If you like the sound of this modern horror classic, then Crow Country is available on pretty much every platform, with it coming to the Switch on October 16th. This is the perfect game to play this Halloween. Also, real quick, if you're enjoying this video, please let me know with a like or subscribe for more gaming videos weekly. Up next, we definitely have the most out there game on this list, and also the cheapest. Do you remember the PlayStation classic LSD Dream Emulator? It became a very popular YouTuber game a while back. The game has you live out dreams in this low poly aesthetic, with you warping between different locations randomly to simulate the look and disorienting feeling of a dream. Disillusion is a game that replicates that same otherworldly feeling, throwing away conventional design and graphical language in this strange and charming experience. The premise is very simple. You awaken in this strange world and have to climb this tower accompanied with your companion named Mel. There is a plot here to unravel, but with the surreal tone of the game, it's best to leave that for interpretation. Speaking of, Disillusion's community could use your help. The game has tons of flaws and different ways of warping around the tower, but given the niche audience for this game, a lot of the mechanics aren't well documented, which can add a lot to the uncharted feeling of the game. The wiki for Disillusion in particular has next to no information on the game given its niche presence. Maybe your route could take you to places other players haven't seen yet, which is a huge charm this game has going for it. The game does differentiate itself from its inspiration. Disillusion is also a first-person RPG. The mechanics are nothing deep, but you'll have enemy encounters along with boss fights, so you'll want to make sure your equipment and levels are at least on par with these fights. The game is never too challenging though, and finding these abstract images alongside a stick of Brock called Brock Lee just adds to the whole bizarre dreamlike vibe the whole game has going for it. The NPCs also talk, but they don't really make a whole lot of sense. Playing this game late at night with some good headphones on could be a very tranquil and therapeutic experience on the Steam Deck. It can be a really good way to unwind before going to sleep yourself, assuming these visuals don't creep you out. It really is one of those games that you can turn all thoughts off to and just vibe out with you picking it up and putting it down at your leisure. The game is only on Steam, but the price point is so cheap, less than most launches, so it's well worth a try. At the minute, there's even a sequel in development, which I'm looking forward to trying. The visuals seem to be going for a more 3D pre-rendered look, and I'm all down for that aesthetic. Try out Disillusion if you're looking for an experience unlike no other. Up next, we have a pretty forgotten gem of the RPG Maker classics with Pocket Mirror. If you're unfamiliar with these kinds of games, there's a really good chance you've seen them before. The first game to be seen on a mainstream level in this style is the cult classic Yume Nikki, with games like Mad Father, The Witch's House, One Shot, and other inspirations that take from the genre like Undertale, all following a similar look and having incredible narratives. Pocket Mirror is easily up there with those titles. These games tend to be less about the actual gameplay, leaning more into the atmosphere and storytelling aspects that can be done through the medium. As a result of this, the game is also really easy to spoil, so I'll be giving a very light description of the kind of experience this is. You begin the game as an unnamed girl as you explore what starts off as a castle with the iconic Pocket Mirror in hand. Throughout your journey, the world around you warps and changes, with environments suddenly transitioning in very unnatural ways. You'll want to collect these regalia, which you'll get from the other girls that you will encounter along your journey, with each of them having very out there personalities and being part of a bigger picture. Maybe the closest similarity I can think of is Alice in Wonderland, but even that comparison feels very surface level. It's a much more psychological game and tackles some difficult subject matter. It's a hard sell, but the game really has an amazing moment where you as the player have to piece together what's happening and it all just clicks into place. Things might seem random at first, but everything here makes sense when given the context. It's just that once someone says that context, you'll miss out on that amazing moment where you as the player piece it all together. The confusion here is intended. What I'm trying to say is that it's all intentional from the beginning. The game's narrative feels on the same level as something like Silent Hill 2, where it explores the mind and psychology of a victim of circumstance. However, here it's much more personal, focusing on the protagonist's life and past up until this point. On a more personal level, this game really felt like an outlet or some sign of visibility when it comes to acknowledging a person's mind and how it copes through different hardships. I definitely wish more narratives in games would take note of what's present here. It can make a second playthrough feel more impactful than the first. It's a bit cringe, but this is the only game on this list that actually made me cry, and that was on a third playthrough of all things, after fully understanding everything. I would argue anyone can relate to the themes present here. The game has many different endings, but the experience is short enough, and I would highly recommend seeking them all out to understand as much as possible. Gameplay wise, it's mainly like puzzle solving, along with some chase sequences. It has a very trial and error kind of structure to everything. On a second playthrough, I would recommend a guide, but on a first, it's best to go in blind. Even the game over screens provide context to the larger narrative going on here, so everything kind of just leans into itself. I really can't understate how amazing the story to this game is. Once it all clicks, what you're left with is a really well thought out and unique narrative that can only be done through the interactive medium of gameplay. The art design and cutscenes also stand out here, with the remaster even adding an anime opening that wasn't present in the original. The developers, Astral Shift, really made something special here, and this isn't the only time that will appear on this list. Pocket Mirror is only available on Steam, with it going on sale from time to time. At number 2, we have Voice Stranger, made by System Erasure. This game straight up is incredible. On all fronts, we're talking gameplay, narrative, art, and music. Objectively, I would say that this is the best game on this list. Voice Stranger will have you begin on the surface as you take the plunge down this massive void. Each floor will get a little more difficult, and on your way, you'll witness these flashbacks that explain the story and why you're on this adventure. The game is like a blend of Crypt of the Necrodancer, with how you move on the grid with enemies and obstacles only moving in time with you, and classic 2D Zelda, having you push blocks and switches to open doors. It's derived from a subgenre I'd never heard before called succubon games, where you push blocks around to clear a path. There is way more to the gameplay and plenty of gimmicks and surprises you'll never predict. Also, without saying too much, the game really plays around with the fourth wall, allowing you to do some crazy stuff. If you think you can do it using the game's mechanics, then the designer has already thought ahead and programmed it in. From puzzle shortcuts to breaking the game using its own mechanics against it, give Voice Stranger some of your patience, and what you'll get in return is something truly amazing. Similar to what indies do best, the narrative never shies away from dealing with subject matter you don't see in the big titles, since they typically play it safe. But the game also knows when to pull its punches. The cast here is very likeable and funny at times. The void just does something to you. You'll feel such a range of emotions: joy, frustration, melancholy, and tackling flaws you originally thought were impossible or finding shortcuts really gives that feeling of accomplishment. The pixel art is also great. I'm a big fan of the character designs, and they'll remind you that graphics aren't everything when compared to an amazing art style. Similar to Disillusion, the game could use a push in interest, with the Voice Stranger wiki having sections not documented yet. It can be the sting of a small community. I just hope this game gets its much needed and deserving cult following. The game is only on Steam and it's easily worth its asking price. I've sunk 50 hours into this one and there's still content I haven't seen. The free DLC challenges are an amazing addition to those looking for more. Okay, so I'm actually going to add what I think is the best way to enjoy Voice Stranger, so if you're interested in the game and want to avoid some light spoilers, then please skip ahead to this timestamp at number 1. Okay, so personally, as amazing as this game is, there are some short frustrations that I put upon myself that can easily be remedied with a little hindsight. Play until you get whichever ending you can, you'll know this once you start back at the beginning, but the game still has way more to offer, so don't be afraid to look up a guide if you're stuck. What I'm trying to say is that above all else, don't give up. This game may seem like just a puzzle game, but at its core, the game is a roguelike and it's designed to be played multiple times, discovering secrets and shortcuts that allow you to push further into the void without being voided. The game's hidden nature being a roguelike is another aspect that makes it special. The Steam page doesn't even list this, but it is very much designed in the same way. Okay, so that is what I consider the best way to play Void Stranger. I hope this game has brought intrigue. Moving on to number 1. Just look at this game. At number 1 we have Little Goody 2 Shoes, made by Astral Shift and released last Halloween. First off, the art for this game. There's full on anime cutscenes here and they look amazing, borrowing aspects from 90s shoujo anime and even going into 4x3 at times. They'll change art style with animation seamlessly. I've never really seen anything like it. The actual game itself has you play as Elise, a jack of all trades type of character who has the whole rags to riches thing going on. You'll be living each day out over the course of a week. The narrative has her wanting more out of life as you see what she's forced to put up with when it comes to the residents of Kieferberg. She makes a deal with a mysterious figure in the woods and is tasked with bringing 3 testaments in exchange for a life of luxury. During the day, you'll be tasked with avoiding suspicion and taking on odd jobs to earn money in order to survive in the style of these 2D minigames. At night, you'll be exploring the Witching Hour, a strange place which is where you'll find the testaments. Here is where the puzzle and dungeon exploration sections of the game come into play. It all ties into a bigger picture, and this game is actually a prequel to Pocket Mirror. You can play either game first, but both titles complement each other, and it's pretty rare to see an indie game in general get a follow-up. Little Goody 2 Shoes explores themes anyone can relate to in some ways. Greed, envy, and just wanting more out of life. Typically a game has you challenge the status quo, rising against the odds by leveling up and getting stronger, or being destined to become greater, or relying on others to tackle anything. But what if there was a game more close to reality, having victims of circumstances they can't control, like living in an environment you don't want to be in and feeling isolated? Meanwhile, the townsfolk celebrate a religion you don't believe in and are constantly suspicious of everything you do. Most people can't move away from where they were brought up in. A more generic story will show and give the audience that sense of escapism, but this is what makes Little Goody 2 Shoes stand out to me and really drives home that dreadful realization. Feeling trapped in an environment and day-to-day life that doesn't make you happy, having the player also live out each section of what would typically be a normal week of the main character's life. And it does it all with its heavily flawed but somewhat understandable protagonist wanting any way out of their circumstances with a lack of guidance. To also further drive this point of isolation, this game also has a dating aspect to it, which I get isn't everyone's thing. I can't stand whenever I see it shoehorned into another Fire Emblem or Persona entry. However, unlike those titles, here it's baked into the main story and actually serves a purpose. This is where the light-hearted moments of the game get to shine. It also has themes in common with the LGBTQ community, having the romance options be female, further adding to the themes of self-identity and isolation. I hope this whole section made sense. Little Goody 2 Shoes really stood out to me as a person who typically puts unique ideas that are realised above anything else with what they want out of a video game. This game is wrapped up in an amazing art style, with it even being a musical at times. This game reminded me a lot of my all-time favourite game, Majora's Mask. Both games tackle similar themes and have you living out a day and night cycle, with it having a big focus on NPCs and dialogue. Little Goody 2 Shoes is available on literally everything: PC, PlayStation, Switch, and even Xbox, with a very modest price that goes on sale during most events. It's funny, making this video made me realise how cheap indie games are when compared to the AAA titles. You can buy every game on this list for less than the new Star Wars game that's released at. And that's all from my top 5 underrated indie game list. It feels nice speaking about titles that rarely, if ever, get brought up. When a good indie game hits, they truly stand out like no other. Do you have a favourite indie title that feels like it's been shafted by the mainstream crowd? Let me know in the comments section. Thanks for watching and have a nice rest of your day.